Welcome to the Build Wealth Canada podcast, where it's all about becoming debt-free, accelerating your wealth, and taking control of your money. Now, here's your host, Cornell Schreiber.
Hey, it's Cornell and welcome to the Build Wealth Canada show. We just got back from a family vacation in Florida, and one of the topics that came up as I was preparing for the trip was how can we protect our net worth while we are away if something catastrophic was to happen? Now, since I was getting ready for the trip, the type of insurance that was on the top of my mind was, of course, medical coverage if something was to happen to any one of us on our trip. Now, if you Google it, you'll see some pretty crazy stories of people losing their entire net worth after an emergency medical incident when traveling to the US, where we don't have many of our medical expenses covered, like what we're used to in Canada. So please definitely make sure you always have that type of insurance and read the fine print so you know what is and isn't covered, especially when it comes to things like pre-existing medical conditions that you or your family may have. You may even already have this type of coverage included with one of your credit cards like us and or through your employer. So definitely look into this before you go traveling anywhere, whether it's the US or elsewhere. In fact, one of the first jobs I've ever had was actually working at a travel agency. And I do remember the president of the company telling me how critical it is because she has heard of all these different horror stories of people going to the US, not getting the right coverage, and then getting these just enormous bills. It can definitely be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I mean, that can really set you back financially. So definitely make sure you always get that. Now, as I was making sure that we're covered in that regard for our trip, I also started thinking what other types of insurance I should consider to help protect our net worth. It dawned on me that we've spent decades accumulating and growing our net worth, along with many hours of research and studying to optimize our investments, making sure we're paying the lowest fees and minimize our taxes as Canadians. But what if a single incident wipes all that out? Or even just a large portion of it out? Wouldn't it be completely irrational to not eliminate that risk, especially if we could do so for a not so expensive amount? And really the best solution that I could think of when it comes to this was insurance. So I thought it would be helpful to essentially come up with a checklist that you can use of the different types of insurance available for us Canadians so that you can go through it one by one and decide which types make sense for you to look into more to protect your net worth, whether you're in the accumulation stage or are already financially independent and want to protect the assets that you own. After that, we do a minor pivot to talk about dental and medical insurance for us Canadians. I have been spending an obscene amount on dental care with our two kids. It's super expensive. It stresses me out. And so I wanted to learn more about what the options are for us Canadians when it comes to dental coverage, along with getting medical coverage for things that aren't covered by the government here in Canada. Now, I'm not an insurance expert, so I brought back a popular returning guest who is. Her name is Laura McKay. She's the co-founder and COO of PolicyMe.com, Canada's fastest growing digital insurance company. In 2021, she was named one of the Women of the Year by Bay Street Bull. She has a Bachelor of Mathematics from the University of Waterloo. Her degree focused on Actuarial Science, which included learning about mortality risk, the basis of life insurance pricing and valuation. Laura is also joined by her colleague, Natalie Duplay, who comes from the not-for-profit sector. She's now a licensed insurance advisor that works with Laura and specializes in life, accident, and sickness insurance. And now let's get into the interview. All right, Natalie and Laura, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Yeah,
Awesome.
So good to be here today.
Awesome. Great to have you back, Laura. And Natalie, you're here for the first time. So welcome to the show. I look forward to picking your brain. It's going to be great.
Perfect.
So just to kick things off with the questions, can you take us through what insurance us Canadians typically need so that we don't miss out on any critical coverage that we should have?
Yeah, happy to. So Canada, there's typically 4 categories of insurance that provide financial protection to individuals and family. There's life insurance, disability insurance, critical illness insurance, and health and dental insurance. Each has their own purpose, so I'll talk through each one's individually, but they can come in the form of both individual policies, so you buy just for yourself, or group policies, meaning your employer sponsors a plan for you and you get it through your employment. So life insurance, I've been on the show before talking about life insurance. It pays out a tax-free lump sum for beneficiaries if you pass away. So really this money is there to help your loved ones cover ongoing expenses and debt and other kind of high cost items if anything were to happen to you. So who generally needs it? Anyone with dependents or family members that rely on their income, that have been planning on having that income there when they're thinking about their future kind of lifestyle choices. So that's life insurance. Disability insurance complements life insurance. It basically provides monthly payments, maybe 60 to 80% of your income if you're unable to work due to a disability, whether that be like a short-term disability or a long-term disability. And it really helps you pay everyday expenses like, your rent, your mortgage, your groceries, your bills while you're recovering from that disability. This isn't actually needed for someone who has dependents who rely on their income. It's actually for anyone who just relies on their own income, who just relies on your monthly paycheck to pay for your living expenses. This is where you'd want disability to kind of protect you in that situation. Then there's critical illness insurance, another complementary type of insurance, which provides a tax-free lump sum if you're diagnosed with one of its covered condition. So the most common can be like cancer, heart attack, stroke, kidney failures. And it basically covers medical kind of treatments or drugs that aren't necessarily covered by provincial health insurance. It helps you pay household bills for maybe extra caregiving that you may need, any modifications to your home that you may need if you are diagnosed with one of these conditions. So who needs this? Generally someone without like that emergency savings, like a huge lump sum of savings where they are able to cover all these extra expenses in the case of an illness like that. It's nice to have insurance in place so you don't have to worry about that. And then finally is health and dental insurance. So that's what we're here to talk about today. We just launched this product with PolicyMe, but this insurance covers like healthcare services not typically covered in provincial health plans, like dental care, vision care, prescription drugs, extended medical care, paramedical services. And who needs it? Who looks for it? Typically people who aren't covered through an employer-provided health benefit plan. So it's an individual plan that acts similar to that employer-paid plan when it comes to getting your dental cleanings covered and your vision, your glasses covered and things like this. So those are the 4 types of insurance that we think about. All of them act like complementary to each other. They don't replace one another. They're quite different and they cover different losses or risks that you may face as a family. And the people who are attracted to them or who get them individually depend on your life stage, like your financial obligations and your health circumstances, but they are quite different. And all of them I do recommend to people who need them.
And I remember last time you were on the show, I remember one big takeaway was that just because someone might have it at their work, we shouldn't assume automatically that it's definitely enough. Mm-hmm. And so it is a good best practice is to actually find out how much are you actually getting from your employer for life insurance, for example, and some of these other ones, and then evaluate, okay, do I actually feel comfortable with that? Or should we maybe take some extra because maybe you have more kids than the average person, and so you have more dependents and you want to send them to college if you pass away and things like that. So I remember that was a nice thing where I think it's easy to take that shortcut. Oh yeah, I remember them casually mentioning it when I got hired. HR said we have life insurance or disability, but then, okay, how much is that really? And is that actually enough for our situation? With respect to like our mortgage, maybe we have a really big mortgage and that's not going to really cover all our expenses plus the mortgage if someone was to pass away. So I think that was a really good best practice you shared last time as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to be informed, not be taken by surprise if something happens and finding out you don't have enough. So definitely looking at those coverages, making sure you're feeling like you have all the information you need and comparing it to what you used to have, maybe at a prior job or what some of your friends and family have, just to make sure you're feeling adequately covered is a great practice.
Mm-hmm. And then the only other types of insurance I can think of that we haven't mentioned yet would be like the obvious ones, like car insurance, home insurance, travel insurance if you're going somewhere we're getting ready to go on a trip now. So I'm very top of mind on travel insurance. So like for medical, for liability for the car, things of that. If you're getting like a car rental, things of that. And they just, especially if you're traveling in the US, I've definitely heard some horror stories there of people not being sufficiently covered. Their healthcare systems so vastly different than ours when it comes to that. Yeah, I don't want it, like, especially as you accumulate your net worth, you don't want all of that or a big portion of that taken away 100%. Within a week because you just happen to get unlucky while traveling or things of that nature. Are there any other types that you can think of that should be underrated? Just if a listener's kind of going on that checklist, okay, which ones do I need? Which ones just so I can protect my nest egg? Do you think we mentioned all of them or anything else?
I think that covers it. Car, home insurance, or rental insurance. And then obviously if you're like a business owner, you are in a business, there's a lot of corporate insurance, errors and omissions, directors coverage, things like that you start getting into. But those are the ones that you mentioned are largely the individual focused insurance policies. Yep.
Awesome. One type of coverage that I think isn't always thought about for us Canadians is the health and dental insurance that you mentioned, particularly since we're just used to having most of our medical expenses covered by the government. Can you take us through some common misconceptions about health and dental insurance, as well as who it would be most useful for?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think the common misconception is that the provincial health plan, like OHIP in Ontario, covers kind of everything you need, when in fact there are important services that it doesn't cover, like prescription drugs, dental care, vision care, and things like that. And Natalie can share a lot more about kind of some of the specific items that aren't covered, particularly by OHIP in Ontario. And then we can share a little bit more about who it's for and how to think about whether you need this type of insurance or not.
One thing I'll add to that is also group benefits. You might have group benefits with your employer, but what happens if something's not covered in those group benefits that you need? For example, some group benefits don't offer dental, or they'll have a piece missing that you actually could be using, or you don't have enough for your physio or massage. Sometimes you might want to complement what you have with your group benefits at work with an individual plan to ensure that your family's protected as a whole, because there could be some missing pieces. So it's good to look at what you have at work and then make a decision with your family on what's the best for your spouse or your children or just yourself, if that's necessary, and also making sure that you're protecting for the future. So we want to know that there's going to be things in the plan that are going to protect you for the future moving forwards. It might not be something you're dealing with now, but it's something you might be dealing with in the future.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to who typically needs this type of insurance, generally would say anyone who is not fully covered by their employee benefits to expect to have medical, dental, or prescription drug costs and needs in the future. And we'll get into this later, I'm sure, but just so you know, it helps ensure that you're not caught off guard by these high expenses as they come up, and you have adequate kind of coverage in place, and you don't have to pull from emergency savings to cover them as these things come up. So typically the key demographics who buy these products are people without employer benefits. This can be self-employed, freelancer, part-time workers, maybe people between work or on probation that don't have benefits yet or are waiting for them to kick in. And then it's also pretty common for seniors or retirees who no longer have those benefits through their work because they've retired from their jobs.
Awesome. Yeah, what really got me attracted to this and why I was hoping to ask you more was the dental in particular, because I have 2 kids and wow, those dental expenses can really rack up. It's crazy. I mean, you go grocery shopping and you see all these things on sale. So you save a few bucks here, a few bucks there. And then it's one cavity and you're like, oh, there goes literally hundreds of dollars. And oh, you have 2 cavities. I mean, we've just to take our whole family through, like we don't have coverage, like normal traditional coverage. So I'm glad you're releasing this. And yeah, it's not uncommon to come back from the dentist and it's like $300, $500 bill, just like that, right? I mean, it makes all those other little things you do to try to save money look almost insignificant when it just takes one dentist trip to knock all that out of the park. Yeah, and I imagine, yeah, like you said, like we have a lot of early retirees listening to this, people who are getting close to retirement as well. Yeah, this is obviously something that's quite critical, I think, for sure. Or at least an expense you really want to budget for if you're not sure, because it is for sure. It definitely moves the needle. It's not like coupon clipping or anything like that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's also the cost per person. So if you have a family, $500 per person if you each have an endodontic, periodontal, a cavity, something going on. And also if you're in between jobs, like what if you're in between a job? The great thing about health and dental is you can get it for the interim of when you're maybe on probation at your work, waiting for your benefits to kick in, or you're in between work. And so it's just a really nice way to keep consistent with what you need for your treatments, your dental, your prescriptions, if you have any, right? So it's there as a buffer in between, which is really nice too. It's not a product you have to stay committed to for a super long period of time. It can be a nice assistance for you while you're in between work.
For sure. Yeah, like I know we spent it was in the thousands like over the past 52 weeks just on dental alone. It is something that is, I think should be top of mind for Canadians, or at least to consider, to see if the cost benefit is worth it. Because sometimes it can be quite pricey to pay out of pocket. Now, when I think of these cases where I need insurance, just general insurance, it's typically for really sudden and time sensitive events like a car crash or a dental procedure that I need done as soon as possible. But what about having insurance for things that are less sudden, like therapy and mental health, or things like braces or corrective eye procedures like LASIK eye surgery? How does having private insurance work in those particular cases?
Yeah, so it is a little bit different than, I would say, life insurance, where you expect, especially with term life insurance, you don't expect every single person who has term life insurance to have to actually use that policy. You hope not to use it, and you're able to spread out those costs across a large population, given that some people will use it and some people won't. Typically with these policies, they are used by everyone who has it quite regularly. It's like a frequently used product. Why people like it is that it just helps a little bit to spread out those payments. In some ways, it can act as like a forced savings mechanism, to feel as though you're not getting hit in the face by every unexpected health event every time it comes up. You're going to the dentist, you didn't expect a cavity, and there's a cavity there. And all of a sudden I have this huge spike in my expenses this month that I wasn't expecting, versus paying for this insurance month after month and knowing that those spikes will be smoothed out over the period that you're paying for that insurance. So I think that's why most people like it. It also just feels, if you have regular kind of paramedical appointments or mental health appointments, they just generally being able to know that you pay for this insurance every month, but then it covers these things as you need it. It gives a lot of people that peace of mind. That's why people opt into this insurance versus paying out of pocket for every expense that comes up.
And speaking to being hit in the face, there's actually emergency dental in health and dental coverage. Kids play sports, right? Anything can happen where you get a blow to the face, a car accident, like you mentioned in your question too, right? So if something were to happen where you needed emergency dental treatment, that's another perk of a health and dental plan that I think a lot of people might not realize is there. And that can cost thousands of dollars to get corrected. So
Now, a quick message from one of our sponsors. There are so many opinions on how to invest your money today, but it can be hard to find credible voices to rely on in the world of finance and investing. One resource I turn to every week is the ETF Market Insights YouTube channel, led by today's episode sponsor, BMO ETFs. Market Insights brings in industry experts, and their weekly episodes cover the hottest themes like inflation, infrastructure, healthcare, and more. Tuning in helps me stay up to date on what's happening so I can be a smarter investor, and you can also submit your own ETF questions to be answered on the show. So do yourself a favor and subscribe on YouTube to ETF Market Insights, or visit etfmarketinsights.com so you can be notified when future episodes go live. So for things like really big expensive things that are longer term, like braces, for example, in those cases, is there, because if someone has insurance, obviously they're going to take it if they need it immediately, even though one could argue like, oh, I don't need braces, in the same sense, like where, as opposed to a car accident where you're like, okay, you're injured, you need to stop the bleeding kind of thing, right? It's a very different kind of a situation. So in those cases, is it that there's like a deductible on expenses of that sort? Same with like therapy and things like that. Is that kind of how they do it? So that people are like, I remember as well, like physiotherapy, things like that, right? Because if it's all just covered, then people with this insurance would just take it all the time. Yes, I want my massages every like week or what, like some would try to take advantage of it. How does that work on the insurance side? Is it a deductible thing? Is that how, or something else?
Sure. Yeah. Usually what it is, there's either going to be a couple things that can happen here. There's not typically deductibles. It's usually a co-payment amount. So the insurance will pay a co-payment amount of what the amount is that we say will cover, especially in year 1, 2, or 3. We might cover more for dental in year 2 or 3 than we would have in year 1, right? That's creating that place where we're only going to cover so much maybe in that first year, but we're going to add on more coverage as you stay committed to the plan. So when it comes to dental, there's going to be a co-payment amount usually. Deductibles can happen, but you would just want to make sure you look at the plan to see what those little specifics are within that plan that you're signing up for. Also, waiting periods. There can also be waiting periods for dental. It's a very common thing in the industry to see a 3-month waiting period before you can use specific health or dental items in the plan. So be very aware of that before committing to a plan. And then also that some services like orthodontics, like you mentioned, might not be available until the 2nd or 3rd year of your plan. So you want to plan ahead, right? It's important to get a health and dental plan ahead of time if you have something like crowns or bridges or orthodontics for your dental coming up, because it's not going to be ready for you typically in year 1. It's usually something that comes into play in year 2 or 3, and we'd be able to do a co-payment to help you out with that. But we don't want to come in mid-bridge or mid-orthodontics, right? You want to come in fresh with, you have the expectation that it's coming for you. It's very unlikely the coverage is going to be there for you if you're already partway through already having your orthodontics installed in your mouth or having some bridges already done. You want to come in with the new up and coming procedures. When it comes to massage and physio and paramedical services, there's usually a co-payment or percentage that we pay. So of course, your person who's servicing and doing the massage or physiotherapy or naturopath, whoever you're seeing who is of course eligible in your plan, they're going to give you a bill, right? And we're going to co-pay a certain amount of that. And then the actual person going for the appointment is going to pay the remainder if there's some left over, right? Until you max out the maximum of what's available for that year, because every year it resets, right? So you're going to have a fresh bank of money to be able to use for your services.
Okay. And when you use the term co-pay up, does that basically mean you pay for some of it, the
Correct.
insurance company pays for some of it, and then you agree what that amount is when you sign a policy?
Yes.
That's pretty much how it works. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So that prevents the kind of people trying to work the system and exploit and just I want to massage every day because my back is sore kind of
And also,
situation.
be aware of how much that copayment is, right? If you're going to go for frequent massages, get a plan that has a better copayment amount for you, right? Some plans have a $25 they contribute towards your massage, and that might be fine for some people who go occasionally. But if you're going all the time, find a plan that's going to cover maybe $75 or cover a certain amount until you hit a threshold so that you're able to maximize the things that you're going to find value in with the plan.
When you guys, with the plan that you guys have when it comes to this, is it customizable like that where people can pick and choose different options depending on their situation?
So there's different levels of coverage that we have. So you're able to pick and choose a little bit, but there's not like some companies will offer, insurance companies will offer options where you can do add-ons occasionally, but it's not really pick and choosy very commonly. It's usually you're going to go with a level, right? So it's going to start at a base level
like
and
a
work
plan.
its way up. Yeah. So you're going with the most appropriate plan for what suits your needs, and you can work your way up and make adjustments as needed.
Okay, that makes sense. And when it comes to this type of insurance, how do we determine if it's more financially sensible to pay out of pocket for these healthcare costs versus just purchasing a health and dental insurance plan?
Yeah, I can take that one. Honestly, it comes down to doing the work on the math for yourself and your family. So I would say you start by considering kind of the healthcare services that you, your spouse, your children regularly use or anticipate using. This includes, as you're saying, like dental care, regular dental care, prescription drugs, vision care, and then other paramedical services like that massage therapy and chiropractic care, etc. So try and estimate it. It's not a perfect science, but you can typically have a sense of what you've been paying on these types of appointments in the past. For dental care, cleanings and exams can be like $150 to $300 per visit. Vision can be $100 to $150 per year, perhaps, for those eye exams. And then glasses can be $400 every couple of years. Prescription drugs, if you have any prescription drugs, you can calculate the monthly cost of those. And then what's your usage of typical paramedical services like massage and chiropractic. And then you're just going to take that information and then you're going to go and you look at some plans and you're going to try and understand within the plan, what's the monthly cost of the plan? What are some of the coverage limits that exist? Within that, you're going to definitely want to look at those like reimbursement rates and these deductibles or max out of pocket kind of amounts. And then generally, you're also going to want to factor in what's my risk tolerance. Some people have much higher risk tolerance than others when it comes to insurance. And they're saying, when I look at my total cost and I look at the cost of a plan, it just doesn't add up. And I know I'm taking a small risk that I need that like crown next year, or that my kids end up needing orthodontics, and I'm going to have to pay out of pocket for those. And they may decide that the plan is not for them. And then there's the opposite side of the spectrum where we know people who are just like, I just want to pay this monthly amount and then not have to stress about it when these things come. That's kind of all of insurance in some ways. Like some people just have higher risk tolerance for these things than others. But I think it starts with the facts. If you're a family that doesn't really use too much supplementary health or dental care, like perhaps this isn't the time to get it. But then if you're a family who just like, you have regular usage, you know that your kids are going to need this, you don't want to have these unexpected spikes and costs that come out of nowhere for you, then that might make you better suited for one of these plans. So I can't give a perfect answer, but generally it depends a little bit on how your family looks and what your risk tolerance for taking on some of these out-of-pocket expenses.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you mentioned earlier. I think it was maybe Natalie that mentioned that the whole smoothing out cash flows piece. I could see that being a nice benefit as well. Because I know like we have all our dental appointments around the same time every year. So when that happens, I'm just like, oh dear, here we go. And it's just, you talk like big spike and you see the credit card bill and you're just like, oh, Jesus. Yeah. So I could see there being some benefit from like the anxiety piece of just having that sticker shock, especially when everyone in the family is getting something done, that kind of thing. Sorry, Natalie, you were going to mention something?
Oh, I was just going to mention that obviously I think of it also, it can be like critical illness in a way where you're just preparing for the future. If something were to happen, a diagnosis were to occur, you're also, the family or the person purchasing the plan might be thinking about, oh, what happens if I get a really high expenditure of prescriptions in the future? Or what happens if something does happen and I need to make sure I'm covering that injury or illness? It's a mechanism for protection as well in that way. And Laura mentioned that earlier as well. But just stressing that there are different types of plans. There's guaranteed issue and underwritten plans in health and dental too. And so the underwritten plans require medical, and that would be something that you're preparing for the future more. Guaranteed issue being the plans that you don't have a medical questionnaire and it's going to be there for you immediately. Just something to think about and to be aware of when you are applying for health and dental insurance as well.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like from your previous answer, it's also something where you're not going to try to take out like critical illness insurance right after you get diagnosed with a critical illness, because then they just won't insure you or the price will be astronomical. It's like a thing you do
or
before you need it.
Yeah,
or excluded completely.
It doesn't help you where you wanted the help, right?
Exactly.
Being aware of that.
Yeah.
If you have a condition, guaranteed issue, or if you have something you need covered, you're looking at a guaranteed issue health and dental plan. If you have diagnosis or you have something currently that you're dealing with, but it's best to speak with an advisor too if you're not sure, to point you in the right direction.
Gotcha. And then before we continue with more educational type questions, I want to give you guys a chance as well just to speak about Policy Me, since we haven't done so yet. Maybe tell us a little bit about what you do. And I realize, like we already said, that you guys do also specialize in health and dental insurance specifically. So maybe you can speak about that as well and the new offering that you guys launched.
Yeah, sure. Policy Me is a digital-first life insurance company in Canada that aims to simplify life and health insurance for Canadians. We launched the company 6 years ago. And we launched with a life insurance offering. We made life insurance more accessible and affordable and tailored to the needs of Canadian families. And we made it all digital first. So we made a very easy process for customers to apply online without the long delays or paperwork that are often associated with more traditional insurance providers. We put a lot of educational content online, calculators online, so people can just come without the pressure of being in a sales environment, just self-serve a little bit and think through what they need. And if they're ready to buy, they can go and apply online. If they want advice, they can call in and talk to some of our licensed insurance advisors who can help them think through what they need. In the last year, we've recognized that beyond life insurance, there's a growing need for health and dental insurance in Canada, mainly because the number of providers and options are quite low, especially the ones who offer digital journeys. And we thought, we had a lot of customers coming in and asking whether we offer this type of insurance. and decided it was time to go into and launch a new type of insurance, which we're actually launching in this week. So it's all built. It just hasn't been in the market yet. So it should be anytime this week or next week. And it'll be quickly available to Canadians to come online and check out what our plans look like. And our typical approach when we're thinking about building products and building buying journeys is just to make it easy for Canadians to find the coverage they need, whether that's life insurance or health and dental options. We're always focused on making it accessible, affordable, and just easy. As much as that sounds simple, insurance can be quite overwhelming for so many Canadians and just intense and something that people avoid. And when they avoid it, sometimes they can leave their families in a very difficult spot, right? So we just want to make it easier for Canadians to come, find out what they need, quickly get a price, understand how much this might cost them, and find something that fits within their budget.
Awesome. And is the best place to learn about this just at policeme.com, or are there any other place you'd recommend?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, awesome. So that's Policeme. It's just one word. There's no dashes or anything, just policeme.com. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are entering the market. It's nice to, or not, you've already been here, but now entering with this additional new type of insurance. Yeah, because I remember researching it years ago and it just wasn't, I couldn't find anything that was basically worthwhile for me to take. Like I did that cost benefit analysis that we talked about, and it came out to being the final answer that I came to from my research was basically something really pretty critical would have to happen every year to make the policy worthwhile, because the rates were pretty pricey when I looked at it last. So I'm glad that we've got you guys making it simple and then basically offering something better that is there currently. So that's awesome. And for Canadians, which is nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are there any other key components that we should be looking for when we are evaluating this type of insurance, the health and dental?
Oh, yeah. Unlike life insurance, there are differences and there is some level of fine print to these plans. And it's really important to read through the details to understand. To your point, and a policy like this can be prone to quite a lot of anti-selection. Obviously, someone who knows they have a $20,000 medical bill and immediately tries to buy a plan for $75 a month to cover it. So insurance companies, as they think about these products, do need to add some safeguards just to make sure that they're spreading out and offering fair kind of premiums to all the customers. So there's not too much anti-selection that goes into these books of business. So there's a lot. This is not super easy, and people should plan to spend the time to get to know the plan, because there's different coverages, and then within the coverage there's different nuances to said coverage. So I'll cover a little bit. Natalie can chime in as well, but these are some of the basic things that you should know that you're going to be wanting to look at as you're comparing these plans. So as we alluded to, there's basic versus comprehensive. Most companies have levels of coverage. They increase in price as you go up to more extensive. But you'll want to see, do I just want something that covers really basic things like dental cleanings, or do I want to get much more coverage for dental care? Once you get into those individual plans, you're going to want to look at kind of annual maximums. So typically there's annual maximums on certain type of services. So maybe there's only an annual maximum you can get for those things like massages and chiropractic and things like that. Sometimes there's per service limits. So for some plans have a certain dollar amount per service that is in combination with those annual maximums. Sometimes there's lifetime maximums, like a lifetime maximum for braces. So you can't get braces 4 times in your lifetime.
Right.
Most people want to, but insurance companies will prevent against that. You're going to want to look at excluded services. So sometimes some more cosmetic services may be excluded, like teeth whitening. Even LASIK surgery on some plans may be excluded. So if that's what you're going for, you may really want to be aware that those things can be excluded sometimes. Waiting periods, as Natalie mentioned, for certain types of care, they may say you need to wait 6 months before you can jump into orthodontics in this plan. You're going to want to look at whether your dependents can be covered in your plan. Can you add all your dependents and your spouse to the same plan? Is that what you want to do? And then travel insurance. Some plans have travel, some don't. And that's another component that you want to keep a look at. As you can see, it's probably becoming quite clear this isn't that straightforward. We've done our best to make all these topics and turn them into more like plain language as best as we can, like the most easy, comprehensive way to look at it in the least amount of paperwork and fine print we could. But there's just no way to avoid it with these type of insurance plans. They just come with some nuances. Most of that has been put in to keep the plan affordable, because as soon as you remove waiting periods, and we've looked at this when we thought about how do we differentiate ourselves in the market, like there just comes a lot of extra costs when you remove a waiting period or when you increase the per service cost, because you just know there'll be a lot of people that may come in, buy the plan, get that very expensive item, and then cancel the plan the next month. And that type of behavior needs to be spread out by everyone who's buying the plan, because you don't do that level of personalization and pricing. Everyone needs the same price. It gets complex. I can't sugarcoat it. If it's for you, and once you understand those basic terminologies, I think it becomes intuitive enough. And you can always call someone at our company and kind of get more details for you. But yeah, so there's a lot. That's the answer. There's like a lot to look at. Don't glance over some of these nuances. You could be disappointed. The good thing is you can cancel at any time. So if for some reason you find out, oh my God, I didn't do the due diligence I wanted to, and it's not working out for me, it's not like there's penalties. You're not locked into 12 months or anything like that.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Anytime.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. People they get worried about these longer contracts. They're like, oh, I got to sign up for 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. That's good to hear. You mentioned travel in your answer as well. That was one of my other questions is that something that's covered when you're traveling or not? And so it sounds like you were saying it depends on your policy.
Depends on your policy. Personally, we've opted out to put travel into our policies. It increases the cost quite a bit, and it's only used by a select few people. But for some policies, you can get it in there. There's some good things with travel insurance that come with these plans. One is like you can do things like fulfill 3 months of prescriptions in advance if you're anticipating those travel needs, and just get yourself set up with all your medical requirements in order to take a longer trip. Some have emergency medical coverage. Usually when you're buying it through a health and dental plan, you may be limited to the number of months or days that you can get this emergency medical. So you can't be going away for 6 months as a snowbird and buy your travel insurance like through your medical or your health and dental plan. You're going to want to look at travel insurance on its own for those type of trips, because you want to make sure you've got like really comprehensive coverage given you're away for so long. And then sometimes you want to pay attention to whether like pre-existing conditions are covered and things like that. So just as sometimes it's included, lots of limitations typically to keep the cost affordable. If you are someone who's going away for a long trip and want all your pre-existing conditions covered, go to someone who sells individual travel insurance for that. That's probably a better bet.
Gotcha.
I can add something to that really quickly, if that's okay. I was just going to add that when it comes to health and dental insurance and you have travel coverage, you can add a top up through a travel company and do that. But once again, you want to, like Laura mentioned, make sure the stability period on your health and dental plan is good, because if it's a 6-month stability period, if you had something that you were diagnosed with 3 months before, that will not be covered on your trip. So you want to ensure when you're looking at travel insurance, you're looking at the stability period, especially if you've gone through some sort of an event or a diagnosis or injury, to make sure you'd still be covered if something happened. And then just being aware that's something you want to look into. And that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, we'll have to have another podcast when we launch travel insurance. And go through all the nuances of that as well. But that is a
credit card
as well.
Yeah. Credit cards have travel insurance. So you can always look at your credit card and do add-ons to credit cards too. And they typically are actually very inexpensive, but it's something to look at, especially under age 65. Sorry, I didn't interrupt, but I just got excited because a lot of people don't realize their credit cards have travel coverage and you can add on to them as well.
Yeah. That's what I've been digging into this a lot recently, just because we're starting traveling now. And the credit card that we have has it. And I actually read like the fine print, and the coverage is it was quite impressive. It wasn't just like some little thing they tacked on. So I think that's a really good practice is before go and travel and actually see, like you said, if your credit card does actually have the coverage, because it might not have all the coverage, but it may cover you more than you thought, which could definitely save you some money as well. That sounds good. When you mentioned the pre-existing conditions, I know that's a pretty critical thing. In those particular cases, let's say someone has a pre-existing condition, and obviously so they may not be covered for that. I've noticed a lot of policies, they say, okay, you're covered for this. Again, when I was looking at the credit card documents for the insurance we have, okay, unless you have a pre-existing condition, then those are not covered. Typically in the industry, is it just that pre-existing condition that will not be covered? But if something else happened, then you would be covered? Is that how it typically works?
Yeah. So there's two types of health and dental plans, as Natalie kind of alluded to before. There's fully underwritten, which you're going to get more coverage for a better price because you're willing to declare your whole health history to your insurer and say, I'm willing to take on any exclusions for pre-existing conditions because you know everything about me. And those are quite strong offerings. But there's a lot of people out there, especially retirees, that have a lot of pre-existing conditions. And they're saying, if you're not going to cover my current prescription drugs, like, why am I even getting this plan? Frustrating to have a bunch of conditions and then find out I'm going to buy this plan for other future conditions that I don't know about right now, but my conditions won't be covered.
This is the one thing I need the most. Yeah. And that's the one thing you're excluding.
So
for
there's
sure.
Guaranteed issue plans that have slightly lower limits, but are just, they'll pay for anything and they will have specific personalized exclusions to you based on pre-existing conditions. We actually find those are much more popular in the health and dental world. Very popular. Just because I think people typically get triggered to buy this insurance once they actually start having things that they want covered. It's intuitive that if you start paying $50 a month for prescription drugs, that's when you're triggered to look at health and dental. And the last thing you want to hear is that I'm going to buy this policy and it's not going to cover those drugs. Right?
That makes sense.
So I think it just like the timing of it is more intuitive and makes those guaranteed issue plans better. They have slightly lower coverage amounts than what you would see with fully underwritten. And again, they can be a little bit more expensive, but for most people, that's the plan that they choose. If you're super proactive, and you don't have any pre-existing conditions, I think generally going the fully underwritten route is best because you can get more coverage for everything at slightly better prices.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good tip, kind of a best practice, because maybe there are some people out there where they got quoted some numbers for whether it's disability or health, and they're like, oh, this is way too much. I'm not going to pay this. But then maybe that was just for the one where they don't have to get a medical exam. And then if they're willing to do that, then that may actually change it where it's, oh, now it's actually more affordable and I'm getting better coverage. And so, yes, I am willing to go through the medical and disclose all that because it's going to increase my coverage, decrease the cost, one, the other, or both. So yeah, it's good to know, I think, that in Canada that we do have these options. It's not like here's the only one thing, take it or leave it. And then now the person's stressed out because they don't have the coverage because they feel it's too expensive. So great.
Yeah,
good to know.
One thing I'll add to that too is usually when you see underwritten plans, they have way more prescription drug coverage in them. So you really are preparing for if something were to happen, like a critical illness or some sort of diagnosis. So just, being aware of that. And also when you do apply for a guaranteed issue plan or a health and dental plan in general, you should make sure you're looking up if you have a specific medication that's really important to you. We can always look up the DIN number on the bottle and make sure that because not all companies will cover all of the medications you're taking, especially if it's a brand name versus generic. It's a whole other conversation, but basically we can look up the medication for you and let you know that we cover that on the plan ahead of time, just to give you peace of mind, because there are sometimes some exclusions, especially if you're taking a medication for something that is not for its intended use, they might not actually accept it. So as long as you're using the medication for its intended use, that's great. And then also we would look it up and be able to give you the information you need based on what you're taking. So that's very helpful. And I will mention on an underwritten plan, so after you do all the medical questions, et cetera, and you get the plan, you can use the dental right away. You can go for a physio appointment. You might just need a doctor's note for an underwritten plan. So there are some other caveats to having an underwritten plan that we just want to be aware of. So when you speak with an advisor, you can always ask these questions, and we always will point you in the right direction based on what you tell us. We want to make sure that we're pointing you in the right direction. And as Laura mentioned, guaranteed issue is typically just the one people go with. It's peace of mind. You can use things right away. It's fast. You can apply with us for in 5 minutes and get a plan right away. It's typically the one people go for.
Makes sense. Awesome. Yeah. So you guys basically do both, and it's up to the person which route they want to take. That's great. That's good to know. Now, of all the things covered under a health and dental plan, what areas of coverage do most Canadians prioritize or care about? And what are some areas of coverage that you think are underutilized or that Canadians can stand to benefit from more?
Yeah, I think generally it's what we've been talking about a lot. Definitely prescription drugs is something that people really care about, especially if they're taking drugs currently. Dental care is super important to most Canadians. They're thinking about it. They see those cleaning bills. They definitely want it covered. And then the paramedical services like massages and physio and things like that. In terms of what is typically can be underutilized is mental health coverage. I think generally maybe a lack of awareness of this being covered or just difficulty in finding providers may prevent people from using as much of it as you would want people to be using, especially when they have it covered in their plan. And then there's some preventative health programs. Typically our plans cover like dietitians, naturopaths. Many plans offer this coverage and it can be overlooked. Always good once you get the plan to look at all those coverages and if something's interesting to you to check it out.
Okay, awesome. And to finish things off, what are some of the most common questions that Canadians ask you when it comes to health and dental insurance?
For sure. What does it cover? And what's all the nuances?
Yeah.
You're going to want to ask those questions. What does the provincial health plans cover? I think people are generally, some of it's quite intuitive, others not intuitive. So they want to look at the difference between what in their province is covered versus what may not be covered and how this can supplement the provincial health plans. We're lucky in Canada. We have provincial health plans and they're very comprehensive and they're awesome. But there may be some things that aren't covered and people are typically trying to figure that out for themselves as they're evaluating these plans. Then, just how do claims work? I think it's a very common question. How do I get reimbursed? How quickly will I get reimbursed? What's the claims process? Is it digital? Is it paper-based? That sort of thing. Those are common questions and something you want to ask when you're evaluating whether to get these policies or not.
And if they have to wait to use it, can they use it right away? That's a huge one too.
That makes a lot of sense. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for the training. It's good. Like I said, I've been looking for something like this for quite a while. So it's exciting to see that you guys have something now new that you're bringing forward to Canadians. And yes, I look forward to checking it out. And yeah, you mentioned that it's launching soon, but by the time this podcast launches, you guys will already have that up there available for anybody that wants to check it out. So I'll make sure I time it so that anybody listening that wants to check it out, when they hear this episode, it'll already be available on your site. So that's great. So again, thanks for sharing. And just to finish things off, can you tell us a bit more about PolicyMe, how you guys differentiate yourselves and what you offer? Because I know we talked a lot about medical and dental today, but you offer other types of insurance as well. So I just want to give you a final chance here to tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you're different than a lot of the other companies out there.
Yeah, we provide life, critical illness, and health and dental insurance. So a lot of other products out there on the market, but those are the three we specialize in. Things about how we differentiate ourselves, totally online experience. So we make it fast and easy and pressure-free when you're looking at applying for life insurance or health and dental insurance. You can do it all. You can do it all in less than 20 minutes. As Natalie said, for some products, it may be less than 5 minutes, depending on how much application questions there are to answer. But it's all online, very accessible. I think there's no medical exams for most applicants, so you don't have to go through burdensome like nurse visits and other things. We can't promise it for every applicant, but we do our best to only need that on like very necessary circumstances. We really have competitive rates. It's something that we stare at as a company quite often. We want to make sure we're bringing affordable insurance to Canadians. We're looking at streamlining our applications to make delivering this insurance as affordable as possible so that we can pass those savings back to customers. So that's super important to us. And I know something that we look at quite a bit as a company. And then just exceptional customer service. Like we're very accessible via phone, email, text message. We have a team there that is licensed and ready to answer any questions you have as you're going through the process. And we're doing our best to make insurance as demystify it for Canadians and make it easy and affordable.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I saw you guys have a bunch of guides online as well that I'll link out to as well for anybody that wants to learn more. Again, going along with the theme of demystifying a lot of this. Because I know a lot of the if you just Google this, you'll probably find a lot of pages from other sites where it's a lot of like legalese and you're trying to decipher it and that kind of a thing. So that's awesome that you guys are producing some great content on how to learn this in a non-stressful way for us non-lawyers out there.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much again for coming on. I'm glad you guys are adding this new offering into the market, especially for people like myself who are kind of in that retired, semi-retired phase, don't have a traditional job with all this coverage and everything. And so it's nice to know what our options are here as Canadians and what to look for. And just so that we become educated when we're shopping around for this kind of thing and that we get the right type that we need. So thanks again for your expertise. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Bye. All right. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please share it with someone that you think may find it useful. And of course, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify is always super appreciated as well. I'd like to end with a big thanks to one of our sponsors who, apart from my investing course, literally keeps the entire Build Wealth Canada podcast and website free for you. Do you know why asset allocation ETFs have become so popular? Asset allocation explains over 90% of the variation in a portfolio's quarterly return. So it's no wonder Canadian investors are turning to these ETFs. Today's sponsor, BMO ETFs, offers these innovative all-in-one solutions with the BMO All Equity ETF, ZEQT, the BMO Growth ETF, ZGRO, the BMO Balanced ETF, ZBAL, and the BMO Conservative ETF, ZCON, and many more. BMO developed these to help provide investors with ETFs that offer broad diversification and are also low cost and simple to use. These ETFs invest in a number of underlying index-based ETFs and are rebalanced automatically back to your set asset allocation or mix of stocks and bonds. They offer a hands-free approach to investing that is built on disciplined weights to provide exposure to different geographies and sectors all in one solution. BMO actually offers 8 asset allocation ETFs, and you can learn more at bmoetfs.com.
Thanks for listening to the Build Wealth Canada podcast at www.buildwealthcanada.ca.